Coming up on Dare to Love, Samya takes us inside the Hadith, the second most holy book in Islam next to the Quran. We'll hear from a former Muslim and her story of how she was attracted to the love of God. Also, why are there different styles of veils and coverings for Muslim women? Samya answers that question and more. Now, here's Samya.
We're glad you're watching us today. I'm Samya Johnson, bringing you a new way to think about the Muslims who live in our neighborhoods, so that together we can face our fears and maybe bitterness towards Muslims and eventually reach them with the message of the gospel. Today we will focus on learning about the Hadith, the second most revered source after the Quran for Muslims. Jesus taught us in Colossians 4:5 to be wise in the way we act toward outsiders and to make the most of every opportunity. That's why we learn about Muslims and their beliefs, to use what we learn as an opportunity to proclaim the gospel at the right time. Let's start by introducing the Hadith. Hadith is an Arabic word which means discourse, dialogue, or conversation. The collections of a hadith, the plural of hadith, are scripts of the acts and conversations of Muhammad. The Quran does not include the story of Muhammad's life, so the various volumes of a hadith compiled by Muslim scholars include detailed reports about Muhammad, what he said and did throughout his life. Because of that, the hadith are the most important source for the Sunnah, which is the established model of Muhammad's words and deeds that Muslims should follow. Now, if you read the Quran, you will notice that it does not contain many details of how Muslims ought to practice their religion. So the hadith fills in the gap by providing the details. For example, the salat or prayer is described in detail in the hadith: when to pray, how to wash certain parts of the body before prayer, and how to make up missed prayers, and so on. All this is not found in the Quran. So, the hadith supplements the Quran as the source of the Islamic religious practices and laws.
After this short break, Samya will disclose the date the Hadith collections were written, the gap that created a serious dilemma, and thousands of counterfeit Hadith.
Why do Muslim women cover their heads? Do all Muslims really have to pray in Arabic, even if they don't speak Arabic? The more you look into Islam, the more questions you'll likely have. Get all of your questions answered by Samya right here on Dare to Love. Just email your questions to ask@daretolove.tv. ask@daretolove.tv. Learn more about our ministry on our website, daretolove.tv. You'll find a number of helpful, free resources, including online books and articles, as well as our radio and television programs. Our compassion and relief ministry reaches both Muslims and former Muslims with the love of Christ in Muslim-majority countries. Watch some of their testimonies and be encouraged by the Lord. And check out our online store with all of the tools you need to get started reaching out to Muslims in your neighborhood, including our own publications, The Simple Truth and Dare to Explore, both written by Samya Johnson. Get involved. Become a ministry partner or host a seminar at your church. And feel free to contact us with your comments and questions. We'd love to hear from you. It's all on our website, daretolove.tv. daretolove.tv.
Now, you might think that the ahadith were written by the first close followers of Muhammad to validate their prophet's biography, but that did not happen. The earliest collections of ahadith date 150 to 200 years after Muhammad's death. That's more than a 5-generation gap. Did this gap affect Islam? Muslim scholars admit that many of the so-called ahadith were in fact counterfeit sayings that had been fabricated. This took place during the first 200 years of Islam, when the Khulafa, or successors, reigned after Muhammad. The gap between the time of Muhammad and the later generations who wrote the hadith created a huge dilemma. By the year 200 Hijrah, that's approximately 840 AD, there was a total of 600,000 ahadith. 2/3 of them were fabricated by almost 620 forgers. Several factors encouraged religious leaders to narrate false sayings and acts, claiming that they were spoken and practiced by their prophet. Financial incentives by the Khalifa is one factor that encouraged forgers to fabricate stories about Muhammad. For example, Al-Khalifa Muawiyah awarded Ibn Jundub and others hundreds of thousands of dinars for coming forth with a hadith that served his purposes. Sometimes Muslim leaders of a particular school of religious or judicial thought, such as extremism, fabricated stories to support their beliefs and make Muslims follow them. On another level, al-qassasun, or the storytellers, who used to sit in the town squares and gather people around them, had direct access to the public and enjoyed the influence they had on the simple Muslims. So they came up with imaginary stories about Muhammad. There's no doubt that forgetfulness and transmitting the reports orally from one generation to another played another major role in having thousands of false ahadith. By the end of the 9th century, the hadith was collected and categorized by Muslim scholars such as Al-Bukhari, resulting in 6 canonical collections called As-Sihah As-Sitta. But Muslims have been divided since the existence of the hadith collections. Shiites and Sunnis have different collections of ahadith, and some believe them only when it suits them. For example, they accept passages in them that would glorify Muhammad and his teachings, but reject those that discredit him. Every hadith or report consists of 2 parts: matan, which is the text of the report, and isnad, the chain of transmitters to that hadith. The chain of transmitters is very important, as it decides whether this report is authentic or fake. For the Sunni sect, the strong and most trusted hadith are those which are transmitted through Ahlul Bayt, or the family of Muhammad, his wives, daughters, and cousins. The Shiites, on the other hand, trust the hadith which were transmitted by their imams. Even with all this difficulty in separating the fabricated from the authentic, still most Muslims believe that the hadith collection is divinely inspired. In his book Introduction to Islam, Muhammad Hamidullah states that the teachings of Islam are based primarily on the Quran and the hadith. Both are based on divine inspiration. In contrast, the Word of God, the Bible, is the complete message of the loving God to humanity. No other book or source is needed to complete it or to fill in the gaps. In case you just tuned in, you're watching Dare to Love, where we learn about the Muslims who live around us so that we can reach them with the message of Christ. We continue to learn today about the Hadith, the second most trusted resource in Islam after the Quran. We learned where the Hadith was compiled and what it's all about. Now let's read some of the Hadith or reports that are found in Hadith al-Bukhari, one of the 2 most trusted Hadith references. Here are the volumes I use in my researches. Every volume includes several books. For example, volume 2 includes 63 books, and each book includes reports, and these reports are numbered. Okay, I will read some, but I put them on a piece of paper so I don't keep opening the books. From Volume 1, Book 4, narrated by Abdullah bin Zayd. Once Allah's apostle came to us and we brought out water for him in a brass pot. He performed ablution or the washing ritual before prayer. In this way, he washed his face 3 times and his forearms, then his elbows twice. Then he passed his wet hands lightly over the head from front to rear and brought them to front again and washed his feet up to the ankles. Now, Muslims imitate their Prophet and try to wash up the same way. Here's a hadith from Volume 2, Book 13, which was narrated by Abu Huraira. Allah's apostle talked about Friday and he said, "There's a suitable hour on Friday, and if a Muslim gets it while praying and asks something from Allah, then Allah will definitely meet his demand." And he, the Prophet, pointed out the shortness of that time with his hands. Muhammad did not define here when this hour is. From Volume 5, Book 59, narrated by Ibn Abbas, Abu Tal'a, a companion of Allah's apostle, told me that Allah's apostle said, "Angels do not enter a house in which there's a dog or a picture." He meant the images of creatures that have souls. That's why up till today Muslims don't keep dogs in their houses, and they never hang a picture or a piece of art that has an animal or a person. So this is where Muslims find answers to their everyday Islamic practices, and this is the source that helps them form the Islamic Sharia law. If you want to read more, Hadith al-Bukhari is available online in English. We have several links on our website under free resources. Read some hadith and let us know what you think of them. I'll be back after this short break.
In South Sudan, daily life can be a struggle for anyone. For an orphaned child, though, life can seem hopeless. True Light Orphanage in the heart of South Sudan is where orphaned children find hope. Through the love and dedication of Maria, a young woman from Egypt who left her homeland to minister to these children, the True Light Orphanage provides a safe, structured Christian home environment. Call of Love Ministries partners with True Light Orphanage to ensure that the work that Maria began will continue to grow and flourish. There are basic needs of the orphanage that are urgent, like their own well for clean drinking water, a new kitchen building to replace the termite-infested wood hut, and chickens and goats for nutritious, affordable food. Please consider giving generously to the Compassion Ministry at Call of Love. An ongoing monthly gift of $20 or more will provide Maria and the children the security of regular income. A generous one-time donation will help them reach their building expansion goals. Your tax-deductible gifts will make an eternal impact for God's kingdom. Join Call of Love Ministries in helping Maria raise up Sudanese children who follow Jesus. Call 832-220-4040 or visit our website, daretolove.tv. That's daretolove.tv.
Most of us think that it's impossible for a Muslim to reject his or her religion and embrace Christ. Muslims confirm this and they deny the fact that Muslims are coming to Christ. Watch this true story of Wafa, whom we recently met.
My name is Wafa, means faithful, loyal. I truly believe that Islam was from God. I truly believe that Muhammad was a prophet of God, and I truly believe that he was even the best prophet. I started not liking Islam after I started searching, going into depth. And then that's what happened to me in my teenage years when I was about 16, 17 years old, and I was so thirsty to have a personal relationship with God, and I thought that it's going to happen through Islam. So I started studying Islam in depth in order to quench this thirst. I started reading the Quran, practicing doing the 5 prayers, the washing ceremonies, the fasting, the month of Ramadan, and I used to fast even over Ramadan because I really wanted to become a very good Muslim, faithful believer, and then to be as close to God as possible, thinking that the religion is going to take me to this level of spirituality where I could feel His presence and have a fellowship with God. So one of the questions that I asked to the people around me, that I did not pick anybody, I picked people that they were very mature as Muslim adults, that they were very good religious people, and then I said, what do you think if I pray God with my own words, if I just open my heart with maybe a Moroccan dialect that's not as beautiful as the language of the Quran, but if I open my heart and I express my feelings, my adoration and worship and my needs to my Creator, isn't that better than doing all the rituals? And then the people around me, each time when I ask this question, people around me, they used to tell me, no, He's going to reject your prayer. I used to say, why? They said, because God is God, and then if God asks you to do something, you really have to do it. He asks you to pray this way, you have to obey. Who are you to discuss with God? I said, but this is not taking me anywhere. I pray, I recite all those verses, I became, like a machine. After a while, you know them by heart, and then you start reciting them, and then it's in the old Arabic language that I could not even fully understand the meaning of the words. And then I felt as empty as before, and I said, prayer is supposed to take me closer to God, and it's not doing it. I am empty. I really, really prefer the time when I talk to God and open my heart and have, this is better for me. It works better than that. I went to college. I applied for a visa to go to France as an international student. I prayed a lot for the visa, and the Lord granted me the visa. I would say maybe 2-3 weeks after I arrived, I met this wonderful group of Christian students. And then we met, and they invited me to go to a Bible study. I was just coming back from Morocco, and with all those questions about Islam, I said, why not? Let me discover what Christianity is all about. So I went, and I was nicely surprised to see their prayer and their worship. How sincere they were, how innocent, how pure. Just a prayer talking to God. There is no rituals, there is no, you have to wash your hands before you talk to God. There is nothing. They came to Him with all their sins. They came to Him, to confess, to praise Him, to thank Him, to ask Him for help, and then that was beautiful. So I started liking the God of Christianity. I started liking the Christian view of God, the love, loving side of God that was hidden according to the Muslim teaching. I was so confused between the fact that I am a Muslim and I'm supposed to be a Muslim, and then the fact that I started liking Christianity. It caused me a problem. I went back to Morocco for a summer vacation. I bought the Quran, and I started comparing between the Quran and the Bible, and then just crying to God, and then asking Him to reveal Himself to me, and then to show me the answer. I went home. It was the winter time. I'm not sure which month, but it was the winter. It was dark. It was maybe about 11:30 in the evening, and I was in my room in the campus by myself, just thinking about God as every day. And then I was walking back and forth in the room, and then all of a sudden the words of Rashida came into my mind. But it was different. It wasn't like Rashida telling me that God loves me. It was something else more powerful. It was like the Creator Himself was talking to me and telling me, Wafa, I love you. I love you more than your mother does. I love you more than your father does. I love you more than anybody else. And then while I was walking back and forth, I saw an image, something that came, like an image, a woman delivering a baby, and the baby coming so from her womb. And then God used this image, and He said, I loved you so much. I loved so much human being. They were delivered out of my heart. And I shared with you a beautiful nature, beautiful universe. I created all these things even before creating you, because I created you out of love. I left the room running. It was in the evening, it was cold, it was dark. I don't know, I was in the 3rd or 4th floor, going down all the stairs, running outside in the streets, trying to find a payphone. And I called Rashida that was ready to go to bed, and I said, Rashida, you're right, He loves me. I trust every single word that you have telling me. God loves me. And then she was amazed. I'm sure that she was praying for me a lot. I went back home and I had this peace, because remember, I come from a Muslim background where the dominant feeling in my heart about God was fear. the fear of this majestuous God, powerful and mighty God, and I am a sinner, what he's gonna do to me, and then the fear of ending up in hell. Now the Lord was telling me, if God was telling me at that point, if your mother doesn't hold any grudge or anything against you, how about me? My love is greater than her. So the fear of the punishment now was covered by love, and then instead of being scared and fearful, I started feeling peace. And then I remembered it was a Tuesday evening. And I remembered every Tuesday the Christian student, they had a meeting, a Bible study, and I went. They didn't invite me, I went by myself. I walked all the way, and then I was late, I sat on a chair, and I started listening to the guy who was preaching, who was giving the Bible study, and then the Bible study was about the cross, Jesus dying on the cross for us. A message that I've heard so many times, dozens of times during those 2 years, and then it didn't really touch me. I was completely blind. I could not understand the purpose of Jesus coming on earth and then giving his life for us. But that particular day, I understood it all in like a fraction of a second. I started weeping, hearing the same word all over again. My heart was torn. I cried and I told him, God, if you really did that for me, there is no reason in this world to deny you or to reject you. I truly want you. I truly want to be yours.
What a testimony. You know, millions of Muslims, just like Wafa, are accepting Christ every year after they learn about the hope and life Jesus gives everyone who believes in him. You can watch the complete detailed testimony of Wafa on our website. If you are a Muslim and would like to share your testimony of how God's love changed you, we would like to hear from you. Our contact info is on the screen. Coming up next, I will answer some of the questions we received from you.
Islam, Muhammad, and the Quran offers a thorough analysis of the origins of Islam, its founder, and its holiest book. Dr. Labib Mikhail spent years studying the Quran in its original language to help readers understand Islam and how it differs from Christianity. The book is divided into 3 sections focusing on Muhammad, the Quran, and the religion of Islam. Get your copy of Islam, Muhammad, and the Quran. Call us at 832-220-4040, 832-220-4040. To order online, visit our website, daretolove.tv. To order by mail, write to us at Dare to Love, Post Office Box 498698, Cincinnati, Ohio 45249, USA.
I always enjoy answering the questions we get from you. As we learn more about the Muslims who live around us, God helps us use this knowledge to effectively connect with them and have friendly dialogues about our faith. The first question says, why are there different kinds of veils or hijab for Muslim women? Do they have any religious or social significance? Well, the word hijab refers to the different styles of veils Muslim women cover themselves with. It could be as little as a headscarf that covers the hair, ears, and neck. This style of hijab leaves the entire face open. This is the most common form of head covering for Muslim women in the West, for working women, students, and the less conservative. Another style of hijab is the niqab, which is a full veil, usually black, covering the woman's entire body. There's only one thin opening for the eyes, and the niqab is usually worn by strongly conservative Muslims such as the Wahhabis in Saudi Arabia. Some women supplement the niqab with sunglasses and gloves as well. Now, the chador is similar to the niqab, but the entire face of the woman shows. It's a full body cloak Muslim women in Iran are expected to wear outside. Now, the burqa, known in the West as burqa, is another very conservative veil that not only covers the entire body, but there's a mesh that covers the eyes. The Taliban regime requires women in Afghanistan to wear the burqa outdoors, but other conservative Muslim groups make their women wear the burqa as well. So to answer your question, the veil or hijab that the Muslim women wear indicates what group she belongs to. As to the social status, the quality of the cloth and embroidery point to the social status of the family. I encourage you to respectfully ask your Muslim friend about her veil. This might be a good opportunity for you to listen to her, get to know her heart, and find ways to reflect Jesus' love. Here's another question. What's the best way to meet Muslims in my area so I can befriend them and eventually witness to them? That's a great question. Many of us are not aware that Muslims do live in almost every city and town in non-Islamic countries. Your phone book could be a start. Search for Arabic or Mediterranean or Middle Eastern restaurants and grocery stores that sell or cook halal food in your area. The owners are usually Muslims, and those who buy halal food are Muslims. Islamic worship centers and mosques can be found online as well, and these mosques sometimes carry directories of Muslim businesses in your area. The newspapers found in ethnic grocery stores can also tell you of the different businesses and services offered by Muslims. Also, on our website, under free resources, you will find links to good websites that can help you find Muslim businesses and events in your area. My prayer is that every Christ follower in the West would start to initiate reaching out to the Muslims who live and work close to them. Jesus died for these Muslims as much as for you and me. The Apostle Paul wrote in Romans 5 that at just the right time, when we were still powerless, Christ died for the ungodly. Very rarely will anyone die for a righteous person. Though for a good person, someone might possibly dare to die. But God demonstrates His own love for us in this: while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. This is the good news that we need to carry with us everywhere we go. I pray you will do that today. If you want to watch this episode again or share it with your Christian group, let us hear from you. Thank you for watching, and until we meet again, I dare you to start loving your Muslim neighbors.
Thank you for watching Dare to Love. In learning about true Islam, we can protect our children from the westernized version of Islam and, with Christ's help, boldly witness to our Muslim neighbors. If you've been blessed by what you've heard today, we would like to give you the opportunity to partner with us. Call the number on your screen right now or visit our website. Dare to Love is a production of Call of Love Ministries, a Christian nonprofit organization. All contributions are tax deductible. Donate online at calloflove.org. That's calloflove.org. Or call us at 832-220-4040. That's 832-220-4040. You can also send a check to Post Office Box 498698, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45249 USA. Together, we can make an impact in God's kingdom.
Meet us here next week as we continue to unveil what Islam teaches its followers, how Muslims practice their faith, and what we as Christians should know as we try to witness to our Muslim neighbors. Dare to Love is made possible by the friends and partners of Call of Love Ministries.